everyone. This is Dr. Christy Taylor, and welcome to episode 2 of the Career Coach RX podcast. And today we are going to talk about stress management and the power of pause. I am here with Kim Groshek. She is the CEO of Power of Pause International and founder of the Spring Swarway Scholarship Foundation. Kim, tell us a little bit about yourself and what
Hi,
inspires you.
thanks for having me. This is great. So I have been in industry for over 35 years. I have my own company, and about a year ago, I decided to semi-retire. I then actually something came up in my life where I saw on the news in June there was this young promising boy who was about 16 years old who had a scholarship, and he was going to go for a football scholarship, and he got sucked into social media and he fell in love with this girl supposedly over online, and it turned out to be a guy, or I don't know what they call it, fishing or something like that.
Catfishing.
Okay, yeah. And this is where it hit the bottom. He ended up committing suicide. And I said, this is enough. Enough is enough. I'm a computer scientist and cognitive scientist by trade. And I found myself in and out of social media and the digital AI way back in 2015. I decided to disconnect from social media for a whole year. So because of that impetus in June, I actually then created Pause Power, which is really to encourage everyone to take 15 minutes a day to pause.
Well, recently I gave a workshop on stress management, and for years I've served as a health educator and coach and teaching people all about stress management. Now, you have a unique thing here because first, let me just point out that social media overload is a real thing. So, for those of us who are trying to learn about social media and going through the learning curve, and then we always have our cell phones and stuff on us. It's always at the hip, feeling obligated to jump and answer emails as soon as they come in, feeling obligated to respond to customers, clients, or inquiries. It can really be overwhelming to be consistently attached to social media all the time. And then we also have the everyday wear and tear of life stressors. So you mentioned earlier that that you actually disengaged from social media for a year. Tell me a little bit about that. What was that like?
Yeah. So one morning, I woke up and I went right into social media, and I realized, I looked at my watch and it was 6 hours later. Wow. I was in social media for 6 hours. So then I decided this is enough. So I disconnected social media. I actually disconnected my phone for a year as well.
How did you survive?
And I know I have been working remote since remote wasn't popular, and I still was working remote. So I set up some rules around it where I could use my husband's phone if a call would come in, but I would be on Zoom. That's different. That was for work. And so, but when I disconnected, the first thing I started to realize was the stress on the back of my neck started lightening up. Like, I had this stress. I didn't know I had this strain in the back of my neck, but being on social media all the time, I must have been like tense. And then from there, I actually started to write in the morning for 15 minutes. And then eventually, I would, send out my writing to people and they loved it. I started with 2, and then eventually there were like 200 people eventually that wanted to see it was kind of like, I called it highfalutin mumbo jumbo.
But you
then
took
I have
time
more
to edit and write and jot down stuff.
Yeah. And I actually wrote down my experiences. So I actually then pulled it into, the books. It turned into a book later, but I had it journaled for years. Like I kept that in a practice. Plus, I actually started running more marathons and half marathons. I ran a half marathon in all 50 states because I had time, right? I wasn't just sitting like this in social media. I did an Ironman. I learned how to swim. I didn't know how to swim. So just, went on more trips, spent more time with my husband. We went on bike trips. I'd sit out on the deck and just have coffee and listen to the birds. And, there's just took more walks. It was just amazing how much more time I had from
Do you
just
find that like with technology, when you mentioned the 6 hours, it sounds like you went into a time sink, right? So if you're
yes.
joining us here on TikTok, I am speaking to Kim Groshek. She is a author and coach and motivational speaker centered around stress management. So if you're tuning in Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, we are engaged today in talking about stress, which is an important part of managing your career and productivity effectiveness. And so let's talk about a little bit about that time sink. Was that something that happened to you often?
Yeah, so it's wild because you know, so I have 3 books that came out of this. So I like to show them so you kind of see
Oh,
why,
definitely.
because it actually relates to what's happening. So when you pause and when you talk about time sink or time, I created think inside the time box,
Okay.
right? So really what it is. So here we go.